Hello everyone, my name is Jitin Sharma and welcome to this session Metapro with Kotlin. A brief introduction about myself. I work as an Android engineer at Gojek. I'm a Google developer expert for Android and also organizer of Bangalore Android Meetup group. So let's get started. A bit about this session. This is kind of an open-ended session. It's based on some things which I had discovered while working with Kotlin in a world outside of Android. It's about automation, automating things around code, and it's about Kotlin, our favorite programming language. So, what is metaprogramming? A lot of us are either front-end engineers or back-end engineers. So we write code which produces UI, or we write code which produces API, depending whether we are doing front-end engineering or back-end engineering. Metaprograms are a bit different. In this case, basically, you write a program which generates a set of piece of code. So you're writing code to generate code. That's what metaprograms are. We have used metaprograms in our daily day-to-day basis. They are like code generators or code parsers. A very simple example would be an annotation processor. We all use annotation processor on day-to-day basis to do different sort of things. So annotation processors can also be divided into generators and parsers. Libraries like Dagger actually generate source code when you pass annotation to them, whereas libraries like Retrofit or JSON don't generate source code, but they parse those annotations and do something with the code. So annotation processors are a very base set of meta programs, as if you would say. So let's look at source code parsers and what we could do with them. So why source code parsers? So the advantages which source code parsers give you is they help you gain insight over large code base in a very automated fashion. You don't have to manually look through the code base to find out what kind of classes or what kind of functions you might or might not have. Once you have that information, you could easily build static analysis tools, which help you analyze code base, and you could use it to build custom documentation also. I'll give you more examples about that later. So how would we start with parsing source code? So before we start parsing source code, we have to understand the structure of source code, basically its anatomy. We might some most of us might have written Java at some point of time. So if I have to understand the structure or a blueprint of a Java code, I could probably describe it like this. I have a file which can have a single class. A class could have inner classes, and then it could have functions, it could have variables. There can be modifiers like private, public, protected, and class type could be abstract, interface, or static. Pretty straightforward structure. When it comes to Kotlin, this structure becomes a bit complex. Basically, your file may or may not have a class. Your file could have just a function or a set of variables, or it could have class. Those classes then could have their own classes, their own function, their own variables. So the whole concept is kind of complex as compared to Java. And then you have modifiers like type aliases in addition, which actually don't create types, but they are modifier. And then you have extra modifier layers like object, companion, and data class. So yeah, so it's a bit more complicated structure than what we see in Java because it's more flexible in nature. So we can have a Kotlin file which can have a variable, it can have a class, data class, inner class, whatever. Now we want to parse this file. We want to parse this file and get data out of it. So how do we do that? So we use something called program structure interface. So program structure interface is part of IntelliJ Open API. It's also known as PSI. So it's a structured format which can be used to parse source code. It is used by IntelliJ to parse source code. So all these nice things which you see in IntelliJ like quick fixes, warnings, they are built using PSI. And PSI is language independent. So basically you can create a PSI structure for any language which IntelliJ supports like Java, Kotlin, XML or anything. So let's see how we can create a PSI structure for a Kotlin file. Basically, this is a simple method which allows you to create a PSI structure from a text. Basically, you parse the string of the source code. You define the language in this case, which is Kotlin, and then you get the PSI file. One more thing which you have to provide is something called project. So project is defined by what you are trying to parse. So in this case, since we are trying to parse Kotlin, we will create a Kotlin project, Kotlin core environment project. And then we define something called environment config files. Since Kotlin supports multiple, since Kotlin is a multi-platform in nature, Here, since we are trying to parse JVM files, we will write JVM config files. We could also write JS or native files if we are trying to parse a project which is JS or native in nature. How do we get this? So there is a simple jar available called Kotlin compiler and embeddable, which is an embeddable jar for whole Kotlin, for most of Kotlin compiler. It allows you to access the APIs which Kotlin C uses while during the compilation process, and it has a lot of extensions built on top of PSI which will help you. So PSI is kind of a recursive structure. Basically, you have a PSI file and it has a set of PSI elements. Those PSI elements may have another set of PSI elements, and the PSI file itself is a PSI element. When you use the Kotlin compilable embeddable jar, you get a KT file wrapper. Basically, you can take your PSI file and have it as a KT file. So let's take an example of a file. We have something called arrowview.kt. It's a pretty standard file with set of imports, classes, and a function. So let's start parsing this file using PSI. We'll pass this whole file as a text and get something called KT file. So the whole arrowview.kt, we now have the whole file as a KT file. So let's start one by one. From KT file, we can get something called KT import list. KT import list is the list of imports, and each import is an import directive which allows you to get data about that import. If you're using alias, you can also get alias such as Android color. So here we have alias the Android.graphics.color as Android color. So we can get the Android color itself as a KT import alias. Next comes class. So we can get a handle of KT class which is present in this file. From the class, we can get KT primary constructor. Constructor allows you to get the whole constructor as a function and its variables as well. And supertype entries. Supertype entries contains all the entries which the class is extending or implementing, whether they are abstract classes, interfaces, or anything else. Now we come back to function. Basically, function with function you can get first of all the modify token, like which declares whether this function is private or public or internal. You can get a KT parameter or a KT parameter list. So parameters list will allow you to, it will tell you what sort of parameters this function is accepting, and a type reference which will tell you what type this function is returning. KT block expression and KT expression. So KT block expression allows you to get the expression within the block, and the KT expression will give you the whole expression of the function itself. If you have written documentation for this function, you can even get this documentation for this function or even at class level using something called kdoc. So kdoc can be used to retrieve any documentation which was written for this function. Now we have this whole class, and using set of functions we are able to get data about everything in this class, like what kind of file it is, what kind of classes it is present, the functions, their parameters, their return types, import list, and whatnot. So as I said earlier, PSI is kind of a recursive visitor. So basically, once you get a KT file from the PSI factory, you can just use a element visitor which implements the visitor pattern. The compiler embeddable jar has some nice extensions built on top of it. For example, class recursive visitor or name function recursive visitor, which allows you to recursively get all the classes in a file or get all the functions within the file. This is a graphical representation of a PSI structure of the same file. We have arrow view, its package, import list, its classes, their primary constructors, class bodies, functions, their modifier list, and then their blocks. This is actually an IntelliJ plugin called PSI Viewer, which you can get from the marketplace. So this allows you to view PSI structure of any kind of file, be it Kotlin, Java, XML, or any other language which IntelliJ supports, and it just shows you the whole PSI structure as a graphical format. Now we are able to get the whole source code as a PSI structure. Basically, we have a handle of a code as a data. Now, what do we do with this data? We could just map this data into another model class, like a parsed file. So this model class has name of the file, the documentation, and then a set of classes, functions, and variables. Those classes then can have their own functions and documentation. Same goes for functions and variables. So what do we do with this? We create a JSON file. Basically, we have a source code, and now we have a blueprint of the source code in a data format. So we have the name here, all the classes, their documentation, their functions, and then their functional documentation and all the other things. So we have now mapped the whole source code into a JSON file as a structure, not the actual logic. What do we do with this? One thing is build custom documentation. So this is something which I have tried personally also. Basically, Docker is the first place where you will go when you start writing Kotlin documentation. But Docker is not really configurable because it's built on its own set of rules. So if you want to pick some specific things out of a class, or you want to build documentation from multiple sources, or you want to include some custom things in documentation, you will find Docker to be not very configurable in nature. So doing this kind of parsing allows you to build very custom documentation, which you could do if you're a library developer. Build static analysis tool. So you can build domain specific static analysis tool, which are very specific to your project. Since PSI and Kitfile allow you to get the whole of your project, and you can access all kinds of file, find out what kind of code is written. You could build static analysis tool using that. An example is KTlint. So KTlint uses the PSI structure to parse the whole source code, and then it allows you to build lint rules on top of this, like how many lines of code should be there in file, in a function, or in a class. So that is another advantage of doing this. We talked about source code parsers and their advantages. Let's talk about source code generators. Again, the same question, why do we need source code generators? Avoiding manual boilerplate code. As we write a larger application with a set of architecture, we often run into writing a lot of manual boilerplate code, which could be easily automated. Source code generation promotes templating, and it ends up creating a lot of formalized code base. Templating could be around anything. It could be around your MVP, MVVM architecture, your layers, your DI layer, any kind of base class which you are rewriting again and again. You could template it, and you could create more formalized code base around this, because then everyone uses the same template. Kotlin is a very good, very efficient language for doing file operations and writing source code, because it has a lot of extension around strings, and you could use Java 8, which has a very good set of file operation APIs available. You could use coroutines if you are working with a large set of files, and then process them asynchronously. So a very simple example of writing file templates. So basically, this is the extension we were talking about. For example, we have something called trim indent. So when you're writing source code, trim indent will make sure that any line which is out of indentation will be automatically indented. It will find out what's the base indentation of the whole string, and then it will apply that indentation everywhere. And then you could just write using the Java files API. But this is a very plain string. You could make it kind of dynamic using string templates. Basically, you pass the activity name and layout name, and then you write again. So this is a very basic example, and it works fine for writing very smaller template. But as you want to write more complex template, you need some sort of structured code gen. This is a very unstructured way of doing it, and not very type safe, because we are just using string. So we need some more type safe way to write code. So one library which allows you to do structured code gen is Kotlin Poet, which is developed by Square. So what Kotlin Poet allows you to do is, it allows you to write source code using APIs. It has APIs like file builders, type builders, function builders, adding parameters, adding modifiers, adding superclasses. Basically, any piece of code which you write by hand, you could write using an API here. So the difference here is it's a structured API. Basically, you're not doing string manipulations or writing those things by hand. You now have an API to write the code. So what could we do with this API? Few slides earlier, we took source code and built a blueprint out of it. What if we could do reverse? Basically, have a blueprint ready and develop source code out of it. Mostly it will be void of logic, but it's a very good tool to develop templates. So let's take an example of this template. So if you look at it closely, you will identify that it's a template for creating recycler view. Recycler view is one of the components in Android which allows you to create which asks you to do a lot of boilerplate code. Basically, to create a single recycler view, you need to have adapter, view holders, view holder items, and then include the recycler view in XML, and then bind it all together in some main activity or a fragment. So let's see how we can automate this. So with some code here. So it's the same thing. So we have something called country list adapter. The views here represent view holder. So we have a item view holder, which is a text view. And let's see. So we'll just run this file. It creates something called country list adapter for us, and the country list adapter has item view holder as a return type for on create view holder, and the adapter is type of item view holder. And we have on create view holder and on bind view holder, and so we have generated a recycler view here, and then we also generated the XML file here, which is a text view. So this is a very simple example. Let's take it up a notch. We will create an adapter with a different set of view holders, right? And let me just delete the previous one. So the difference here is we now have two view holders, item view holder and list view holder. The return type is into normal view holders even here, and then the same functions are generated: get item count, on by view holder, get item. We also have a get item view type now, since we are using multiple view holders. So we added this function, which was not present if it had a single view holder. And I did generated template files for the both view holders also. And this is done using a very simple piece of code. We have something called recycler view generator, which has a create and a create item views, and create adapter. So adapter allows us to create adapter classes, and then we write the logic inside it that we want to have multiple view holders or we want to have a single view holder. So to do that, basically it allows you to remove a lot of boilerplate code, but it's a double-edged sword, because schema-based code gen works really fine when your schema is fixed. Basically, any changes in your schema will require a lot of change in the generator. So, for example, recycler view is kind of a fixed schema thing, because you can create an exhaustive set of variables which you want to pass in data and then generate source code out of it. But if you can't define schema properly, then this does not really work well. Another thing where schema is properly defined is SQL. So there is a library called SQLite, again by Square, which does the same thing. So instead of you creating an ORM, basically you write a query. So these queries are SQL queries, and SQL structure is pretty well defined now. It's not something which has changed over the years. So you have a very fixed schema here, and you can create queries like create table, insert, get all, where you just do select star or insert into. And using this, it creates queries for you. It uses Kotlin Poet only to do this. It creates a queries for insertion, for getting back, and then it creates a transactor. The SQLite itself is multi-platform, because all the queries and all the code which it writes is actually Kotlin only code. It does not really depend on any platform. The only platform dependency is when you actually initialize the database. The database itself is created using code generation, and you can just pass Android's SQLite driver if you are executing on Android. If you're executing on iOS, you could pass a native SQLite driver, and then the same piece of code works across platform. So the code is generated in Kotlin only fashion, but it can work across multiple platforms. So the whole point of this exercise was to demonstrate that Kotlin is a very nice language for tooling, and it has a lot of nice functions like closable.use, which will automatically close the closable. You have line sequence, which allows you to easily parse code strings. You have files.write and files.find APIs from Java 8, which you could use, and there's a ton of APIs like this, and which allows you to do tooling and write files, doing file related operations, which are code part of writing source code in a very efficient manner. How would you do it now? So if you want to integrate this kind of module in your own app, so if you have an Android project, you will have an app module, module 1, module 2. You could have a tools module, which is not actually an Android module but only a Java module. This can be created by using Android Studios, create a new Java library path, and just apply the Kotlin plugin. So then you could start writing code here, and then you can just execute this thing using Java jar. Basically, when you build that project, you'll get a tools jar, and then you can pass this different set of parameters, create a CLI configuration, and then create a CLI configuration, and then use it to invoke different set of generators or parsers. One more thing which you could do is, if you don't want to create a separate module or go through the jar path, you could create something called KTS file, which is a Kotlin script. It allows you to directly write scripting. So KScript can also be used. So this is a bit dynamic in nature, but IntelliJ is adding a lot of support around KTS file. So this is another path which you could go if you don't want to really go to jar path. So KTS and KT files are same when it comes to syntax. They both use Kotlin syntax. So fun fact, the a lot of us would have used the standard library and the collection library from Kotlin. The whole library itself is auto-generated using templates, not in the similar manner which I showed, but in a different manner. One of the reasons to do that is these libraries are also multi-platform in nature, so they have different kind of templates which could generate libraries for JVM or native. So yeah, it's present at Kotlin source code also. Thanks for your time. I hope you found all these things. These are like findings which I have found out while working with Kotlin in a non-Android scope, but with an Android project in the end. It allowed me to automate a lot of stuff. I hope you might want to try out PSI and other stuffs. I cannot take questions because it's an online, but my Twitter is always open. You can follow me on Twitter here or DM me if you have any other questions regarding this. Thank you very much.